Welcome, listeners. We're here with another episode of Sales Beast. We've got the amazing Nickey Calford on the call with us today. Nickey, welcome. How are you?
Great. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us, Nickey.
No problem.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Nickey, sorry to cut you off, Anna.
Go for it.
I'm sure I'll do it again at some point over the course of this episode. Nickey, we know you very well, but some of our listeners won't. Tell us a little bit about you, about yourself. So how long have you been in the business? What's your level of production, GCI, units?
Okay, so I've technically been in the industry for close to 20 years. So I started, when I was 12-ish. And then about 5.5 years ago, I got my license, then followed that up with my broker's license, and I've been kind of just working away doing that. The GCI depends on the year. I've kind of started out and have doubled my income pretty much every year other than last year since I started, which has been good, and usually do about 40 deals a year on average.
And I'm looking at your stats right now. You're pacing for more than that. So we're going to expect at least 50 out of you this year, Nickey.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm on.
Yeah. So we'll have you on maybe in January to do the year in review and make sure you hit the 50 goals, hit the 50 deals.
Perfect. No pressure.
Yeah. And what's your main focus? You're the opposite of me.
Yeah. So I actually love buyers. And I love my first time home buyers, and I love investment buyers. So that's been, I like that side of the business a little bit better than listings.
Where do you get most of your business right now, Nickey? Like, what's your main source?
So right now, this past year has been repeat referral clients. A lot of that just from first-time home buyers that bought 2 or 3 years ago. So I do first-time home buyer seminars. So that's cultivated quite a few of past clients. And then they're all now looking, with the market going up and everything else, and families and everything else growing, they're selling and then purchasing again. So that's been really cool to see the whole circle this year come through with all those first-time home buyers that are now upsizing.
Yeah, one thing I really respect about you, like, you're insanely busy. I know you're involved in a lot of sports. You have another job outside of real estate. You have a daughter. It's a time-consuming game to play, but you've made the process more efficient than anyone I've ever seen in my life. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that process looks like? Maybe say from the time you first get in contact with a potential first-time home buyer?
Yeah, so you have to have a really good system in place, and you have to be able to cut them loose and recognize if they're wasting your time. So really upfront, and not that they're wasting their time, just sometimes you have to match their motivation. So if they're not really, buying in the next 60 days, they're just kind of nurturers, and they go into a different program than, going out and seeing properties and so seeing all that sort of stuff. So I set them up. We do a buyer consult right off the beginning and set expectations very clear. I don't work with anyone that's not pre-approved, that's not really motivated, etc. So we set that expectation right from the beginning. I give them timelines of where we need to be at, and then I watch and in this market, we have to be really specific, because if they're not coachable and they're not following the process, they're not going to learn and make progress towards getting a house, and then they're just wasting time. And so you have to be really, really clear about, okay, are they coachable? Are they, everyone wants to try it their own way, doesn't necessarily trust me, wants to try out the waters. And that's okay. And I'm 100% for that. And sometimes, what they do bring to the table is a little bit different, and we'll try it. But if they're not starting to see and make progress and get closer and closer on offers, and they want to lowball offers constantly or make ridiculous offers or can't understand conditions and that sort of thing, it becomes very clear to me that they're not actual buyers. And when they're not actual buyers, then I'll find an agent that has a little bit more patience, that can kind of walk them through a couple years of waiting or looking at properties, and kind of make sure they're a better fit with someone else.
And for any new buyer agents out there that maybe aren't doing 40, 50 deals a year on the buy side, could you share what some of those key questions are that you ask people to determine who is not only serious, but who's serious and who's qualified and actually going to go from shopper to a transaction?
So it's pretty hard in the first meeting. I guess when I sit down with them and they're not pre-approved, I can tell right off the bat when I send them to a mortgage broker, if they're back within 2 to 3 days, because I know the mortgage broker only takes 24 to 48 hours to get their stuff that they need, and we're ready to go shopping. But if they're taking their time, they're not getting the right paperwork, they're kind of elusive, that sort of thing, it's a big red flag for me right away. So knowing where they're at motivation wise, I mean, you go through the standard questions about, okay, well, why are we looking at moving now? What's important about moving now? If it's a first time home buyer, really setting the stage of, this is an investment. This isn't your dream house. This is an investment, because you can't save the amount that the house is going up every year as quickly as the equity is coming in this home. And so we kind of, when they start to understand that, then we know that, what, they're on the hook, they're motivated, they're going, and they're going to go through. And then it's more trial and error process while I'm writing offers, while we're in the property. Like the conversations we have, the education towards what happens in an offer, what's going on with what the sellers are thinking, and the conversations we go on from there are more so a telltale for me, whether they're understanding the process or not.
Awesome. And then, throughout the actual transaction itself, in working with buyers, do you have like pieces of leverage that help you, cover the showings or get some more time back in your life so that you're not out there with every single buyer every single day?
Yes. So I do, through part of the productivity coaching that I do through the office, I've got agents in behind that I can send things to. Anything that's leases, that sort of thing, I will, hand off to newer agents that will go and do that. I'm very specific about my schedule. So as I'm, meeting with the clients for the first time, I take Monday nights and Wednesday nights off. Those are my nights where I hang out with my daughter, and I try every other weekend. So I will say very clearly to them, if we need to see a property, we check and make sure, they're not holding offers and we need to get into something. I'll make sure my body double is there. They may not look like me, but someone will be there to open the doors up for you, make sure that you have your questions answered. And then if you need me to write an offer afterwards, I can do that as well, but I'm not going out in the field those nights. And so often clients will be like, oh, can we see? And they're like, oh, but it's Monday, it's your night off. I'm like, okay, hang on, let me see if I can get someone else. You're good if we have to see it. If not, we'll see it on Tuesday or Thursday if they have a holding offer situation, and we're good to go.
That's amazing. So you're really like teaching them how to treat you. And I feel like the realtors that we see day to day, they want to be available 24/7 for their clients, but you're establishing those guidelines and setting them up for success from day one.
Yeah. And I talk to new agents about that all the time. Like, we as self-employed, we can work from 7 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, or 4 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. We can just push ourselves and everything else gets put aside. So being very clear about setting up your schedule. So whether it's, you have soccer games, your kids have this on certain nights, you have date night, you have, weekends off or set vacation time up ahead of time, like 6 weeks out, make sure you've got some sort of weekend or something planned and on your schedule. Otherwise, you guys will know your time just evaporates and you can work and work and work and burn yourself right out.
For sure. Now, I do want to kind of focus on, because you mentioned it already, but on the topic of schedules, you're adding now a coaching role to your world, and, you know, helping other people be great versions of themselves and, you know, get into higher productivity levels. So what does that look like for you right now? And how has that journey been into the coaching side of the industry?
Yeah, it was eye-opening for sure, because we go from being completely in charge of our own schedule. So, you know what, you can throw in a home inspection in the morning one day, and vice versa, or whatever. It made me get very clear about time blocking in my schedule. So my schedule, I put most of my coaching calls are first thing in the morning, like from 8 till 11. We've got that kind of booked out, and then I'll do some trainings and stuff later on in the day. But I can't just be that Pop-Tart agent right now where it's like, oh, I got to go do this. I'm like, no, I have to be, you know, this is their time. So this is where we're at. So I think it's actually pushed me to be more sturdy about my time when I'm coaching clients, to be like, you have to time block lead generation time into your day. And if you can't just let it go, like, oh, okay, well, I'll do that tomorrow, right? So it's kind of made me more accountable to my schedule, and it kind of made me dig a little deeper into that. The other thing too is, I feel like because that time has been taken away, I'm more focused on the other time that I do have and put into things.
Yeah, it sounds like, you know, you're leading by example. Like the words that you preach are also what you're, you know, getting into now on the day to day. What do your like coaching clients really end up doing with you at the end of the day? Like for anyone that's listening that wants to increase their production, is either part of like if they're a solo agent or on a team, and what that might look like for them if they're looking for that kind of opportunity.
I think it's really getting a lot of the foundational stuff right in there, right? Like even if you've been in the business for a little while, you may have gotten busy off the beginning and forgotten about certain things, or, you know, lead gen follows up. It's really about figuring out that right schedule, putting things in, getting the foundation, you know, how to write offers, how to do it quickly, right? So I know, new agents will come to me and it'll take them like 6 or 7 hours to put an offer together, and it'll have multiple mistakes. And then we get it to the point where, you know, they can write an offer in 15, 20 minutes when need be. So it's really getting that foundation stuff so that they understand the ins and outs. And there's so much that comes out of the schooling that we just don't understand, or they touch on it and because you're not in it every day, it doesn't stick. So they kind of work back through to getting a really good understanding in the field, doing it, and then really working on avoiding those ups and downs between lead gen time and then like having no leads and then be super busy, right? So it's kind of optimizing your schedule. And part of the program is it pushes them into overwhelm, because as an agent, you're going to have days where you're going to, how do I show these 10 properties and get this listing across the town, across the street, and get all the, you know, the background information and all of this. It kind of pushes them into overwhelm so that their baseline is a little bit higher.
And they probably at that point start thinking about leverage, and that's not something that they may have needed before if they weren't in that level of business, right?
Yeah, right.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
From what I understand, Nickey, the way your program is set up, it doesn't last forever. It's for when people are new to the business, it's a 90-day program. What does the first 90 days look like? And maybe break it down to 30, 60, 90, because I know you evaluate at each of those points.
Yeah, so the first 30 days, we kind of work with a lot of the foundational stuff, getting things set up, you know, Facebook, social media, different types of lead gen, and then working with buyers. So how to write offers, that sort of thing. As buyers in this market, and everyone, we're all in a seller's market. So buyers seem a little bit easier to come by. There's more leads. Being able to, you know, work someone's open house if you don't have your own listing yet, and use those leads and how to cultivate them and get more. So we kind of work with buyers the first 30 days, get some foundational stuff, get some, you know, business Facebook pages and some database stuff set it in your sphere, and work on that. And then we move into really, you know, getting our scripting really nailed down for listings and listing appointments, and what that looks like and setting up systems for that. And then the next night, the 60 to 90 days, the last 30 days of the program, we're looking at, you know, different types of offers, and working with different types of things with investors, and then setting up the business plan, what we're going to do continuously. So, you know, what pillars are we going to use as our lead gen sources in our program? Now that we've tried out a bunch of them and can figure out, you know, this is what gives me energy and makes me tick every day, versus the things that pull and suck your time, versus, you know, getting all that sorted out. So really looking at getting things, the foundation stuff in the first 2 months, and then the third month, setting up the business plan, setting up and going through those things that you don't see every day, now that you've got a little bit better knowledge and stuff set out.
Based on the conversations I've had with you, it almost sounds like your program, it's an opportunity for both you as the representative of the team you work on and the agent in your program to evaluate whether or not the partnership is a good fit for both sides. Mm-hmm. My understanding, it's not like everyone makes it through your program. Is that correct?
No, and with most PC programs, there's a huge attrition rate. They say usually about 70% don't make it through. And that's, you know, when we look at agents in general, a lot don't make it through in the first year, or they last less than 18 months. And that's a pretty good turnover. This one kind of weeds out. So for me and working with my team, I can say, you know what, this agent's just not cutting it. They're not putting in the energy, or they're not doing the time, or vice versa. You know what, they self-discover that this isn't the right fit for them. This isn't the career that they thought it was either. On the other hand, on the flip side, the agents that do pass and do come through hit it running and are like so much more confident. And I often look at it as, you know, are you taking a French class in high school once a week versus going to France and learning the language? At the end of the year, going to France, you're going to be a lot more fluent in that versus taking one course a week. And so the agents that come out have the foundational skills, have the understanding, have the set schedule, understand, you know, all aspects of the business, and are set up for success, really.
Yeah, it's so valuable from both sides. If you look at the two pools of people, those that make it through and those that don't, obviously those that make it through come out the other end of your program with all the tools they could ever need to be successful. Well, what a gift you're giving to the people that don't make it through your program. So you know just as well as I do that if you allow them to join your team, it's very likely that in 2 years' time they'd still be sitting there and that it wouldn't be successful. The amount of time you're saving these people is huge. Well,
and it's almost like it's a service to the industry too, right? Like, how many agents do we come across that, you know, you get a listing come across or an offer come across on one of your listings and it's missing pay the balance of, and you're like, no, this is crap, right? Like, right. And it's being able to raise the bar for the team and for the agents that we work with to say, hey, you know what, when you come out of this program, you're good. You understand what we're doing. You understand the reasons why we put things in. You understand the background of it versus, oh, I was just told I need to do this. I have no idea why, right?
Yeah, it's raising the industry standard for like who we can allow. And I think you mentioned it already, but I was doing research for our own productivity coaching program at Legacies, and 80% of people leave the industry within the first 2 years. So again, if we can do that in the first 3 months and make sure that we're keeping it tight knit, well, we're not only creating a good industry, but we're able to provide the best service possible for the consumer.
Well, and when new agents come in and have nothing, like, it can be overwhelming, right? I mean, they have a better chance of success when they have a roadmap of what to follow to say, hey, okay, you know, they can be good, but they get overwhelmed or they get lost or they get down the wrong path, right? So, I mean, they have a better chance of succeeding if they put the work in, right? And understand what work it takes. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone, I think.
I love that.
like, I don't know anyone that works with as many new agents as you do. Can you maybe provide our listeners with some traits you see amongst those that do become successful and flourish, and maybe those that fall into that category of the 80% that don't cut it and get out of the business?
So the ones that know how to do everything when they start first day are the ones that don't tend to make it. They'll get a few good deals right off the bat. They'll, but then they kind of fizzle right out. And I know it's a challenge. Sometimes you gotta like, hello, like guys, you gotta actually pay attention here and you gotta do some work. The ones that really make it are super coachable, super like learning based, and kind of step out of their own way. We're going to ask you to do things that aren't comfortable, like script in the mirror or pick a scripting partner from across the country, even like just do what needs to be done to learn things and get out there. And there's the ones that buy in are like, okay, what do I need to do? What time do I need to be there? What do I have to do? They're the ones that once they learn the program, hit it running and are awesome, and when we can give them the competence and the confidence, you see them and it's different. And then they look back and say, wow, even at the first month when I was like, if I could go back and do those appointments again, I would nail them now versus, right? And the ones that can say, hey, you know what, I have learned something and this is good, and they want it, they're just hungry for more.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I bet, like, I'm just thinking through people I've come cross paths with since I've been in this business. It's probably only 20%, the 20% that succeed, that submit to their coach and submit to the process, and show up engaged and ready to learn and grow every single day. I think if 100% of the people showed up and committed to the process and did what they were told to do, we probably have 100% of the people that get in this business achieve great results.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a secret. I think you just gave the magic pill. So thank you.
No problem.
Awesome. I know, the coaching leadership side is super, super important to you, but I know before we kind of dive a little bit deeper on that, what I'd like to do is talk about the massive deal that you just closed. Can we please talk about that for a second?
Yes. That was a big one. So I just we sold a $9.9 million 88 unit building in downtown London, and I worked with another agent in another office. He and I collaborated on it for about 2.5 years, and it finally came into fruition this year. It was a huge learning curve because it went from selling a building, which we all sell. If you sell a duplex or a sixplex or a 20plex, pretty much all the same paperwork. You got to do all the same work. This one went from selling the actual property to selling it as a business. So the corporation that owned it only had that property in there. And so it was a totally different learning curve on the closing side of that, selling the business versus the property itself. And then in that, it had a low-income housing grant on the property. So finding buyers for that was like finding a needle in a haystack, because they basically had to pay cash for the property in order to get it to close properly, and the takeover mortgages, etc. But in the end, I think they got a great deal. The sellers got a great deal, and it was a win-win for everyone.
Especially you, I bet. Let us know, inspire us. What was GCI 200 grand on that?
So yeah, we signed the whole thing at 4%. And so Jim and I split the 2%. So I don't know.
100K?
198,000.
All right.
What do you think was your biggest like learning through that, and like having to do that you would take away from it?
So the biggest challenge with it was the sellers refused to work with one agent. They would not sign listing paperwork. So we had to jump through hoops, and we weren't the only agents that had worked on that project or had talked about that property in the last few years. But we were the only ones that locked down how to do the process properly. So we ended up doing non-disclosures, like confidentiality agreements in order to get even the name of the property, etc. We had to work through who has the funding, etc. Like with a fine tooth comb kind of through the whole thing, and not take every buyer through like to the property, through to the sellers, etc. So we had to be really clear and set up really clear boundaries on that, so that we didn't lose the whole deal to someone else that was just like, oh, I know about that property too. Here, I'll go deal with them. So that was a huge one, trying to figure out a way to convince the sellers that, you know, we have an actual value, was a challenge because they didn't think that at all. Even till the very last day, one of the sellers absolutely loved us. The other one was just like, meh, I could have done that myself.
Jeez.
So in the end, it worked out pretty good. But there was lots of learning curves that way to do that.
And in hindsight, you know, having a partner through it all, like, was that a good experience for you guys both, like being able to kind of mastermind and obviously create some strategies and ideas around how to get it sold, right?
Yeah, I actually love collaborating on things like that. Like even every deal I do, whether it's a first time home buyer or not, like I collaborate with the mortgage broker, and we tag team. Like, okay, you check them on this one, I'll do this, right? Like going back and forth, it was awesome. And Jim's awesome to work with. So, you know, we both have different fortes. Like he was really good with the sellers, and I got to, you know, be on top of all the paperwork and kind of the business end of it with financing, etc., and looking at that part. So it was good that way.
Any questions?
Awkward.
Awkward pause.
Yeah.
I'm still stunned. Like, that's an amazing property. And obviously the fact that you were able to pull it off, and like even in the Slack group, we were all like cheering you on. Super exciting.
Yeah, you know what, everyone was like coming up to me like, are you excited? Are you excited? Like, this is a huge deal. Like, it still is surreal to me, right? That it actually went through. And we found out that even like 2 days before it closed, the bank somehow had calculated things wrong, and the buyout was out by 160 some thousand dollars, not 160,000, like $60, 160,000. And so the buyers at that point could have been like, yeah, I'm done. No, not paying this. And that was 2 days right before closing. And so it was like right down to the wire. We're like, did it close? Everyone, I won't believe it until I see the check in my account, right? So, and even the sellers were the same way. They're like, yeah, we don't have the check yet, so we're not celebrating. So it was really cool.
What do you do to go about finding people that own $10 million buildings? How'd you ever come into contact with them?
So that one, actually, Jim had sold them the property 7 years ago or 8 years ago.
Mhm.
It was just one building. It was pretty dilapidated. So they went about getting all the grants. So Jim had kind of he's friends with one of the owners, and so helped them purchase that property, and then kind of like knew about it all along. And when he kind of mentioned in passing, he's like, oh, you know, I think they're thinking they would sell it. I was like, really? They would? Let's go after it. Like, let's do this. Like, let's get that. Cause they had said, no, you can't sell a building with a low income housing grant on it. You can't do that. You know, the city has to do this. And I'm like, well, there was 2.5 years of batting back and forth on how to do it, what different, you know, strategies we could do. And luckily the buyer that came in was also really savvy about it and worked back and forth with us as well. So it was a really awesome collaboration, kind of like all the stars aligned in the right way. So it was kind of cool.
And that the low income housing grant that exists on the building, does that expire at some point in the future, or is that there?
So sometimes they put them out for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, depending on what it is and how they set it all up. But that one building was 20 years and the next one was 25 years. And we were, I think, I think that one only had 13 years left on it. And the next one had, 15 or so.
Okay.
And so it stays on the property. It doesn't get paid down, but there's no interest or payments on it. So up until the day that it expires, it shows as the full amount owing against the property.
And on the day it expires, does the buyer have the right to do as they please with the building? Can they?
So they can. The city will actually try and do another incentive and line that up before this one expires. So I think on the first building, they had a 5-year before expiration where they could start putting in market rents. But I think the city, because there's so few low-income apartments available, they're going to probably look at doing another grant to pour more money into that property.
Yeah.
And keep
and did you crunch the numbers on that? What's more valuable? Is it receiving the grant, or is it slowly removing the tenants, increasing the rent, which in turn increases net operating income, which increases the value of the building?
Yeah, so it depends what the grant is. They were looking at, I think it was close to 100,000 a door. So if they're going to put in another 6 million, and take you another take you another 20 years, it's probably in your better interest to do it that way and not have to worry about it. Everything's kind of fix it and forget it. But finding someone to buy it at that point or like that makes it really hard. Right. So it's them finding a needle in a haystack with someone that has now, instead of $10 million cash, at that point, it would probably be quite a bit more when they go to sell it. So it's kind of long-term plan. I know the value, these buyers, if you can hang on to it for 10 to 15, 20 years, they're laughing. Like it's unreal what will happen. But it's a long-term kind of hold gain kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You have any other questions for Nickey, Anna?
Well, not so much there, but I do want to go back to the leadership side. What's kind of like your vision long term? Are you looking to eventually, stop trading? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so eventually not trading anymore would be great. I do like the leadership aspect of it. I do like coaching part of it. I like not necessarily being tied down to showing properties and being out in the field as well. So probably see something a little bit different in the next few years that way, whether it's working from the beach in Costa Rica or which is one of the goals, or just having a little bit smaller team where I'm doing a little bit more just coaching from home kind of thing.
Amazing. Anything you want to focus on, Mike?
I think that's good for me. When are we moving out of Costa Rica?
Yeah, well, I just need a couple more $10 million deals and I'm good to go.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. It's a 5-year plan, right?
It is a 5-year plan. My daughter has 5 years before she's off to school and on to her own stuff. So yeah, 5 years.
Awesome. Nice. Let's make it happen.
Well, if there's no other questions, we're just going to start wrapping it up here, Nickey. But before we let you go, we ask all of our guests the same question. Who do you know that we should have on this podcast?
You know what? I think I'm going to put it out to Dan Keegan's. Dan's got some really cool things going on in his business. He's been in the business 3 or 4 years now, and he's killing it. Like, new baby at home, investment properties going, selling tons of properties. I think he just got things sorted out and figured out really well.
Awesome. We'll have to reach out to him. We'll get connected after this call. Well, thank you, Nickey. It's been awesome. We always love chatting with you. I think you've got a lot of great stuff going. Congratulations again on your massive deal. Any final words from you, Mike?
No, thank you very much, Nickey. Dinner's on you.
Dinner's on you next time.
I hear that a lot lately.
Yeah, I bet you do. Lobster and caviar, my friend.